Hit it!
That's what I'm talking about.
Wait!
Okay, now, from the beginning.
What we're going to do is, I'm Wes McDermmot. I work for Allegorithmic. I am the integrations product manager. I also do a lot of the tutorials. Do you need to get over here? Sorry. All right. And do demos and things like that. So what I'm going to do is just talk about Substance and Unity. Substance software, we create Substance Designer, Substance Painter. Are you guys already aware of Substance? Anybody? Raise your hand. Okay. Anybody never seen it before? I have no idea what I'm talking about. Okay, it's okay. We just make a software suite of tools for texturing geared around creating physically based content. So Unity being a physically based engine as it is, we have a really great solution for this. One of the things about Substance is that you can create textures completely procedural. You can do a hybrid approach where you're hand painting textures. We work with scan data as well, so if you want to use scans, you can do all that. So what I'm going to show here today is we're going to take a look at 2018.1, and prior to this, the Substance integration was natively part of Unity. And so with 2018.1, we are no longer natively integrated in the system. So we are creating our own new plugin, and this kind of helps us, but it also is beneficial to Unity as well. Unity wanting to, keep the the editor lightweight and everything like that. So that gives them a lot of leeway to do the things they want to do. But for us, it gives us the ability to continue to progress and do new updates. We can add new features that we didn't have before, such as GPU engine support in Substance. And it also allows us to, when there is an update to our Substance engine, we can get that out to you guys very, very quickly. So we are going to have the new Substance plugin. It's going to be part of the Unity Asset Store, so you'll be able to download it from there. We already have the page and everything's ready, but the new plugin's not there. So for example, if you go to Substance on the Asset Store, we have our Substance source plugin as well as our what we call a live link. So a live link is a link to Substance Painter. And Substance Painter is our 3D painting package. So you can, within Unity, send an object over to Painter, and as you're painting, it's sending the textures back to Unity and updating your material as you work. So it's just a real-time process back and forth between Unity and Substance Painter. All right, so we're back up. So that's what we're going to kind of show here today as we kind of walk through everything. And of course, I like to keep things really casual, so if you guys have questions, just raise your hand and we'll talk about them right here as we go. Let's see. I also had a slide that I was going to do. So let me just open that up real quick. You know what? I'm going to skip it because I don't have. Let's just jump right into it. So the only thing I was going to show you with this slide was going to mention kind of more about the pipeline of it. So you have Substance Designer, which is a tool to create Substance materials. And that's what we're going to show first, the Substance materials. And so you can export those out of Substance Designer as an SBS AR file. And what that does is it gives you a format that you can import right into Unity. A material will be created for you. And then you have the ability to work with any parameters that you expose for that. So for example, here inside Unity, let me just create a new scene here. And we will go to our game object and create a cube, because those are always awesome to demo with. Yeah. And so then what we're going to do is you would import in your Substance package. So I've already done that, but like I said, you'll grab that from the Unity Asset Store. And so here, let me come into my materials. And well, here, let's do it from here. So one of the things that we have available to us within our package, so we're going to have the plugin, which is the Substance plugin, which we're getting ready to look at. We also have the ability to connect to Substance Source, which is our online material library full of PBR-based materials. And then, of course, you have the live link functionality. So here, you would just come up to the top of the menu and activate Substance Source, which I just have docked here on a tab. And so Substance Source, you have access to all of these materials. Some of them are completely procedural, and some of them are hybrids, scans, scan data that's then been kind of parameterized so that you can have extra functionality, like for instance, like cloth, things like that. You can go in and change some of the parameters, colors, stuff like that. So you're not just locked to just a scan. So here what I'm going to do is just come over here. Let's come into some of my assets here, and I might just download. Here, we'll grab this one here. So here in Substance Source, you can see that I can start to browse what the substance is. I can take a look at the map types that it is. Once I have this, I'm just going to download it. So I'll just click download, and it's going to download right here into Unity. So now I have this new material. So we'll come back here to our scene. Now I'll caution you, I am using a beta plugin. So we may see a little quirk, kind of goofy things happen here and there, but it's all right. I'll tell you when it's not working as it should be. So with that, with the Substance plugin already enabled, you can see that it generates the Unity material for me. So I have it here. I'll just drag and drop it right here onto the scene. So I'm ready to go. I didn't have to do anything. It's already hooked up. Now, have you used Substance before in 2017? Just raise your hand. OK, so what I want to show you here is what's changed in our new plugin. So I say we, I didn't do it. The engineers did it, and there's one back there, Mr. Dan. The engineers completely reworked this plugin from scratch, so from the ground up. So it's all new. It's been completely modernized with our new Substance Engine framework. So we're going to see a lot of benefits from that. Number one, we have what we had before in Unity was a CPU engine, and you were capped at 2K. But now with the latest framework from the Substance Engine, we now have the CPU engine that can support 4K. And for the first time ever, we have the GPU engine, which being a plugin outside of Unity, we can add these features that we were not able to add before. So now we have GPU engine support, which lets you do 4K and higher. So again, we have all this extra functionality. But what it looks like is similar. You have your material. These right here are the Substance textures that are being generated. And now what you have here are these new Substance objects. So this is a scriptable object. And you'll notice that now I select the Substance item, and then here on this Substance item, I have all of my parameters. I have the generated textures that are being created for me. We also have the ability to still pack the maps as we did before. So here you can see we have the drop-downs that allow you to pack the maps. This section here has been cleaned up quite a bit, which I'm pretty excited about. Before, it showed all of the Unity shader inputs. It showed all of this stuff, which was honestly pretty confusing. Because when you looked at it, you're like, what is all this stuff doing? So we've kind of removed all that stuff from the old plugin. And really what you see is just the maps that you're using at any given time. So here I can see that I have, I'm using the standard shader in this case. So I have my albedo, I have my metallic, and you can see that my smoothness map is being generated into the alpha of that metallic map, all for me. Now, if I wanted to switch that, maybe in Designer I created my own custom substance with my own outputs or something specific, or you want to work with a, like a custom shader, of course, just like you could before, you can go in and repack these maps as you see fit. So here, I'll just come in and just change the resolution. So you can see we already have support for, hopefully you guys can see that, it already has support for 4K just right off the CPU engine here. So I'm just going to switch my resolution. Resolution's already changed and updated here. I can go in and make some of the changes. For example, if I'm just adjusting like my luminosity for this guy, contrast, saturation, things like that here. Let's see, hue shift, if we wanted to do that. Let me just bring this guy back to 0.5. Yes?
Do you have to expose those parameters in order to do that?
No, you do not. Well, OK, you could, but you don't have to. So you notice that when I grabbed this, I grabbed it from Substance Source. So if you have access to Substance Source through a subscription, all the substances on Source are going to have a set of parameters. And so the parameters that you're looking at here, depending on the substance, like this one here, they're going to have a technical parameters section, which is going to give you the ability to increase, decrease normal intensity, adjust the height field range for your height map, things like that, adjust contrast, hue shift, all those kind of things. But if you authored a substance in Designer, so now you're like, I'm making my own, you can make any parameters you want. And so at that point, you can have a completely fully customized substance. Also, for those who maybe are selling content on the Unity Asset Store or are making materials like that, those people who are authoring those types of materials may have a whole custom set of parameters. The thing is, though, is whatever parameters are exposed to the substance are going to appear here in the editor, just like they did before, except we cleaned it up and organized it a bit. So that's how that works. And you can see just right here in my scene, I just have a material, and it's set and ready to go. That's all I needed to do. So now I can just hit apply on this, and it just saves my changes. The way this new system works is, well, here, let's say it like this. The old plugin, you used to have your material. So you would go to your material. You would have what shader it was. You would scroll down, and then all your substance parameters were tied to the material. And we've basically decoupled that from the material. So now you have this new scripted object here, which is the actual substance. And this works just like all of our other integrations that we have, like in DCC applications like Maya or 3ds Max. So now, again, like I said, we are working to make the Unity plugin up to par with the modern Substance Engine framework.
So that's
Yep.
just a component.
Yeah, that's just a component, and it's also, like I said, a scriptable object. So you have the object here in the editor, but that can also be, all of these parameters that you see, resolution, all this stuff can also be changed and updated through scripting at runtime as well. Yeah, so you have access to all that. It's not an open standard. It's a proprietary standard for substances, but it's what we use through to basically transfer all of our maps and textures through all of our substance software. Okay, so that's just a look at what Substance Source is. And like I said, it's a full online library. We have hundreds and hundreds of PBR materials in here. Again, some of them are 100% procedural. Some of them are a hybrid between scan data and substances. It's scan data, but then we go in and rework some bits of it so that you have some nice procedural type aspects on top of these scans so that you can do adjustments without just saying, okay, well, I have this like rock and it was scanned, but maybe you can change color on it, do stuff like that. So you can do that without having to go outside of Unity. Okay, so the next thing that I want to showcase is the ability to work with Substance Painter with a live link. And so this kind of helps round out what we have for the ecosystem. All right, so let's jump back over here to my scenes. Let's see here. All right, so this was just a small sample scene. Part of this asset here comes from a new course that we just released last week for Substance Painter. So how many people here have used Substance Painter? Okay, good set. Have you guys seen the new version that came out last week? So, okay, well, we reworked the whole UI. So it's a lot nicer. It's a lot easier to use. So we'll take a look at that. So here I am inside of Unity. And so, for example, this wood that I have right here, this is a substance. If we look at it, let's see, where are my materials? Grab this guy here. Bear with me just a second. Of course, I never label things correctly. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, here, let me just search for it. There we go. All right, sorry about that. So here I have this part here. So I'm working on my scene. For this wall, I just wanted something quick. So what I did in this case was I jumped out to Substance Source. So I come over to here. If you look at my assets, I just downloaded it a little while ago. It's in here. Here we go. So this rotten wood. I looked through here and I was like, oh, this will work perfect. This will save me time. Let me just grab this guy. So in this case, I used the Substance plugin to grab myself a pre-made material. So that takes care of that part. If we look here, we can come over to the Substance parameter outputs to this. Now, this particular piece here, you can see that the types of parameters, it gives me the ability to work with multiple outputs. So what I'm showing here is just the standard shader, which is using metallic. But if you were spec gloss, you could use spec gloss as well. You have your technical parameters and so on. So the next part of it is now I have this prop that I'm actually need to do some hand painting, or I need to get in and actually texture because it's it has all the texture UVing is in a 0 to 1 space. So now I have this part. So what I want to do here is start to texture this, let's say, in Substance Painter. So I have Substance Painter. I don't have the project open, so let's just make it from scratch. So here, I'm going to work on this bottom piece here. So what I'll have to do here inside of Unity is select this bottom piece here, and I can right-click on this guy, and I can just say Send to Substance Painter. So I'm going to just send this guy to Substance Painter. And it should be opening up here. So here it is in Substance Painter. I already opened this bottom piece here. And so if I look, what you're looking at, if you haven't seen this before, this is Substance Painter, and this is the new UI and workflow. So one of the things that was really awesome about the new update is we have this new dock system that allows you to just work with these modal views as you need them and so on. And so you can spend a lot more time just focusing on the windows that you need. So in this case, I have a single texture set. I don't need to look at texture sets ever again. So let's get rid of it. So one of the things I'm going to do here in Substance Painter is I'm just going to make my material. Now, Substance Painter is super fast at doing this. And it's also good because we can do this procedurally to get myself like 80, 90% of the work done, and then I can just hand paint on top of it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bake a couple maps for this. So I'll come over here to my bake mesh maps. This is actually a high poly asset, so I'm not going to bake a normal map, but I could. Let's see, world space, I'm going to bake ambient occlusion, curvature, position, and I'm going to set my resolution. I'll just set it to 1024, so it'll, well, let's do 2K. So we'll do a 2K bake, and now I'm just going to bake the mesh maps here. So now Painter's going through and baking these maps, and I'm going to use these in the texturing process to help me generate different types of wearing effects and things like that. And Painter's bakers are GPU-based, so you'll notice they're actually quite fast. So we're already running through a lot of them. We just did the ambient occlusion, which is a ray-traced bake, and so it could take the longest. But you can see we did a 2K bake there, and it's done already. So here I have my maps that I can use in this process. So here I have my layers. Probably going to use these a lot, so let me just park them over here in the UI like this. So if I wanted to be really fast about it, I could just come in here into my materials, and I'm going to come over here to my smart materials, which are just basically like a collection of layer stacks that I've done in previous projects. So when you look at these materials, these are some materials that we ship just by default out of Painter. But these are actually a mix of substances themselves. So you could even, if you had access to source, you could download a bunch of source materials and bring them into here. Or why not just use source itself? So source is also integrated right here inside of Painter. So I could just go out to the source, browse for any of these materials I want, and it works just like Unity. Click, download, adds them right to your shelf. And next time you have a new project, you just open it up. It's there for you. In my case, what I'm going to do is just work with a material that I had made before myself, and then I'll show you some things about it. So let's see here. This guy, let me just do a search for it. All right, so it's this one here, and you get a little thumbnail. It's kind of hard to see on the screen, but this one here is going to be like a mix of like kind of a rusted dielectric material. So I'm going to use this. So one of the things that we can also do in Painter, the new version, this is 2018, we can just drag and drop onto any of these mesh parts we have in here. So I'm just going to apply this material here, and you can see Painter's recomputing it. And then here, I've applied my texture. So now I have this texture here as my base. If I pop back over here to Unity, you can see Unity texture. So now we have the texture right here in Unity as I work. If you have dual monitor, it's awesome because you can just have Unity on one monitor and Painter on the other, and as you're working, it's instantly transferring all your textures. So you're looking at what you're seeing in Game Engine like one-to-one. You're seeing exactly what you want to see in your scene, which is great. So here, you can see it's already done a lot of the texturing work for me here. So another thing that I kind of want to show about Painter is just some of the kind of workflows I use to create a material like this. So like I said, we baked a couple maps. Let's go in and take a look at some of the things that make this up. And I'll show you how this works. So one of the first things I do with something like this is I'll start with just kind of a basic material. So I'm just going to kind of look through here my layer stack. And then we start here with just a simple, what we call a fill layer. So what it does, and if I just right-click here, I can get to this new menu. This is new in Painter 2018 as well. It's a new quick view, so that, again, without having to have a bunch of windows up, I can come in, navigate really quickly here to the channels that I'm going to work with, make changes, come over here to my projection options, make changes, and then when I'm ready to work, I can just start working here. Or if we would like, we could just dock this guy here as well into the UI. Move them over here in case we want to have that open with us as we work. So what I've done here, Painter, as it's geared around working with multiple channels at the same time. So the idea is that I'm going to be creating this physically based material. So I want to view all the channels together as a single material entity as I work. So we start here with a base. Then the next thing I'm going to do is just start to add a little color variation to this. And so let me just give you a quick idea on how something like that works. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new fill layer. In this case, I'm turning off all my channels here because I want to work with just my color. And so I'm going to do a color pick, and I'm just going to pick that base color and then just increase the value a bit. So I'm going to get something like this here. And then I'm going to mask this, so I can just simply come over here, add a black mask to it. Now, of course, I could come in and just start painting on this mask if I wanted to, like this. But what I'm going to do is start to use some of the generator systems. And this is where Painter really starts to shine because, like I said earlier, you can work with this procedural mindset, which is awesome because it lets you work really fast and non-destructively, and it's something that you can save for other projects. And then at the very end, we'll start doing some hand painting. So what I like to do is use this little mask editor here. And so if I look at what this mask editor is creating for me right off the bat, if I just Alt left click here on this mask, this gives me a quick view of what this mask is doing. So here, if I look at this generator, I have a curvature setting. So I can come here to these curvatures, and I can start to play around with some of these shape sliders here to just really focus that kind of mask that I'm creating on the edge based on that curvature map we baked. So now when I go back to my material mode, we can see, okay, now we're starting to get some of this wear just on the edges here like this. Then what I can do is just come back here to this generator, and we'll say here in my texture, I'm just going to do a quick search for like a grunge map, and we'll just use this guy here. So we'll add this grunge map in, and then I can come up here to my texture input, and I'll increase it to basically activate it, and then I can use something like a mode like multiply to kind of cut into it. And so now, let's do this. Let's do our contrast here, just so we can really hopefully see it. So now we're starting to just beat up or kind of tear into some of that just by doing that through procedural methods like this to kind of start to add some edge wear on it. Then what we can do, we have just a mask, so I can start to add more effects on it. So this time I'm going to come in and I'm going to add another generator. This one here, I'll use, let's use this dirt mode. And if you take a look at what this is doing here for this dirt level, it's starting to like kind of in the occluded areas. It's going to add more of this wear. So let's do this. Let's increase our contrast. Pull this down, something like this. So now I'm getting more of this wear concentrating kind of in some of these occluded areas like this. So we have our mask editor. We have our dirt. These guys are just layered. It's all layer-based, so now I've got a whole set of these blending modes I could work with. So here, I'm just going to switch my blending mode to, I guess this, I'll just use max lighten. So now it's going to blend both of these two together. And so here, I'm getting like an effect like this. Now, again, because like I said, we're working procedurally, I can now always go back to my color, and I can start to play around with maybe my saturation values here for these colors and so on. Maybe I want to go the reverse and make it kind of dark. To get this type of effect, which is a little different. But this is like me kind of layering up that color value like that. And so I'm doing that based on these generator systems like this. So now we could say something like, all right, we created that mask like that. Let me add a paint effect on top of this. So here, I'll add a paint effect, and I will come over here to my shelf. Let's grab our brushes this time. Now, I'll probably use these brushes a lot, so let's park that over here in the UI. Let's get rid of our category browser. And now I've got my brushes up and ready for me as I work. And we'll grab, let's say here, maybe, well, we can always filter these. Let's do like a dirt brush here. Oops. And obviously, you want to use like a Wacom tablet or something instead of this mouse. But now I'm just coming in and starting to use this layering effect here to kind of paint some of these grunge pieces in. I can just use my shortcut key to go back. Say maybe right here in this section, I didn't really like where that procedural effect was, so I'll just start to mask it out this way like this. Now, of course, all this work we've been doing, it's updating here inside of Unity. Whoa, no. Yeah, that guy, he didn't like that. But yeah, so again, I'm going to chalk that up to, like I said, I'm using like the cutting edge beta version. Dan helped me. We got like the latest version like a couple hours ago. So yeah, we'll say that. But typically what would happen is when you switch over to Unity, all that work we've been doing, it's just passing over to Unity. So oh, it worked. Look at that. Oh, yes. Dan. All right, so now, you come in and all that work we've been doing here, it's just been working in Unity. Typically, though, you wouldn't see that little goof like that. I mean, it's just as you're working. Another thing you can do about these live link plugins, though, which is, and I do this sometimes when you're working on like an object like this and it's really, really heavy, you can always come over and pause this. So I think what I need to do, and let's see, I'm not 100% sure how to do it right now because it's a little different. But you should be able just to click the button here, and it will basically pause that sending of the data. So, because you may not want that going the whole time while you're working something really aggressively in Painter, so you could pause it, do a bunch of work, and then you're like, okay, I'm ready to send this over, unpause it, and then it'll send everything like that. So that's one way to kind of get around it. All right, so another thing I was going to kind of show with this is, like I said, this is what I started to do, slowly kind of building this effect up. So here we're adding just more and more color variation layers on top of layers like this to start to get this kind of effect. And you can see that this is the way I always work here in Painter, was I'll start with a fill layer that gives me a color, so I have this that I can always change, and then I start with a mask, and then a fill, or I'll paint it with a hand paint. Sometimes I'll see people will go just to a standard painting layer and just start painting. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can do that. I mean, it's totally what Painter's for. But it's nice that you have this procedural capability, because then you're like, well, hey, I can go back and change the color if I want to, or I can do that. So it kind of has some of that Substance Designer feel to it, except it's all in a layer stack, which is different. And then so again here, I'm just starting to layer up some more of these values here. Here's my roughness map. And then this gives me my painted metal layer. Here, I started to add a text here, and this isn't working for me, but I'll show you one thing we could do with this guy is we'll create a standard layer, and I'm getting close on time, so let's do this. This time I'm going to create just a standard paint layer. I'm going to come over here to, let's say, my alpha, and let me grab just grab some text here. So I'm going to grab this text. This one here, we'll call it Unity 3D. Let's come over to my material. I'm going to turn off my channels here except for my roughness. Pull this guy up like this. Now we'll come back. And so here in this area, you can see I'm just going to use this to stamp down some value like this here. So now I'm using height value to, and I did positive so I could get a little bit of a, like an emboss effect. Now what you can do on this is on a layer that we can also add like filters too. So here I'm going to add a filter. We have a host of filters. This time, a kind of a good trick I like to use is then blur this guy here. So you can see that once I blur that a little bit, that gives it a little bit more of kind of that melded into the metal. I don't even know if that's right, if that's a real word. But you know what I mean? It looks like it's kind of more beveled in there like that. And then you can come in and blur this kind of intensity value and so on like this. And again, you can go back and change what you need to do with that. So here, again, I just started kind of layering these values together. Here's where the rust came on top of that. And then finally, we have a kind of a dirt pass on top again, which is going to be driven by just a mix of mask editors and things like that. And then, like I said, that gets you like 80, 90% of the work done, and then you spend the rest of the time just hand painting it. So yeah, like I said, once that's done, what should be happening, hopefully, is you come over to Unity and bam, it's back to what it was before as you work. Yeah?
I have a question on the mesh.
Yep.
Does it matter if it's retopologized in a specific way, like for edge detection, or if you just use the decimate tool in Blender?
Oh, no, it doesn't matter, because you're going to bake the maps. Yeah, and another thing that you can do with that is, let's say that, OK, I have this mesh, and then maybe you want to rework the UVs later. So you can rework the UVs, even though I have all this procedural work, and I can come up to my, and it's changed, edit, project configuration. So you can come up here, and you can switch the mesh out. So now you could say, like, you know what, I redid the UVs to get a better texel density. I'm going to switch the mesh out. You can see that here that we have this option called Preserve Stroke Positions on Mesh. So if you look at the history, which is here, we record everything that you do as you work. And it's done so in this proprietary, magical way. Maybe Dan knows, but so that it isn't like making the file like crazy huge. But what that means is that if you change the mesh like UVs or something like that, we do a reprojection when you re-import that back in. So even though the UVs will be completely changed, all your texturing and painting that you did will back to the new UVs. Now that's specific if you're painting in tangent mode, which is the default setting, and you paint here in the 3D view, because you need to have those tangents to record the strokes. We also have a 2D view if we swap over here to 2D, where you could paint right here in the 2D view, which is lit too in 3D space like this. But if I painted a bunch of strokes in here, the reprojection wouldn't work because it wouldn't have the tangent data it needed. But it's just something to keep in mind.
Of course, the UV map was made by the artist.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So sometimes what you can do, which is cool, is you could like say you grab this mesh, and I'll do this sometimes. I want to see I want to play around with the material. So I have the mesh. I'll do like an automatic unwrap in like whatever 3D program, bring it into Painter, and then I can bake my maps, do my work, and then later go back and redo the UVs, and then reproject it back in, and I don't lose any work.
That's really
Yeah.
that's like big time.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Can you, does it know about object parts? So if this was hierarchically modeled, like in Blender, you have to pair it with your children parts.
Oh, yeah.
Does it know the cap versus the
Yes.
keys and mask out those?
Yes, and yeah, if I'm okay on time to keep going, I can answer that question. So I actually use that. Here's one thing I did. Let's do this just to show you an example of that. Okay, so I have it in here. It's kind of it's dirt. But one thing I'll do is let's say that I create this new material here, and we'll make this a metal, and I'll adjust my roughness here, and yeah, we'll do this. And let's say that I want to mask this really quickly. We have all kinds of ways to do masking. But one way I could do it, thank you, is here I'll just create a black mask. And here I'll add a paint into this mask. I'll come over here to the geometry fill tool like this. And then I can fill based on mesh part. And I'll just click this mesh part here and then go back to my brush. And you can see it's already masking based on that. So I use that mode a lot. And it also will do it based on UV shell. Chunk fill is what we call it. Or you could bake an ID map. So another way to do this would be if I had an ID map. Let me do this real quick. So here, I'm going to bake an ID map. So in my 3D program, I created a mesh that has, I just did a copy of the mesh. Let's see, project files. And I assigned like a bunch of different materials with just different color IDs, just different colors, because I wanted to use that separately. So now I'm going to bake the ID part of it. I'm going to say bake it, not vertex color, but material color. And I'll bake this. So this one takes just a little bit more. It seems weird because you're like, it's just IDs. But this mesh is like really dense. So it had to load that up. But you can see it's still pretty quick. So now let's say that I come into here, and I'm just going to add a, let's get that out of the way. Add just a color selection into here. It already has my ID, so I'll do a pick. And this time I'll choose, I want to put this aluminum on all the green areas, and now it does it. So sometimes it's a lot easier to create those material IDs like that in your 3D program, because you can just do a bunch of Lamberts and just drag it all, if you have a really complex mesh. And I'll work that way a lot. But to be honest with you, I use this polygon fill tool a ton, because if you have your mesh parts like separated like you're talking about, like in a hierarchy, you can just click, 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 and then create the mask. Yeah. Exactly. You might want to move them, yeah. Yeah. And yeah, so that's basically it, and it should hopefully be up. Yep, see it's updating here in Unity. You can see that the whole time we got this little cool metal. So yeah, metal looks cool and everything. So, but yeah, I think that's it, guys. They told me I had to get till 6:30. So if anybody has any more questions, I can answer them. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time, and thanks for coming to the session. It's awesome. Yeah, so we'll have a I don't know if anybody's going to GDC, but we have like a booth over. So if you guys want to see any more demos or have questions, I'd be happy to do some more demos for you. Thank you very much.